Hello there friends, it's Ashley here from the Loopy Lamb and theloopylamb.com, and thanks for stopping by the channel today. For today's tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to do the cables in my Lakeview Cabled Beanie pattern. This is a really fun project. This is my absolute favorite hat that I've ever crocheted, and I do the cables in this project a little differently than you'd see in most crochet cable patterns. For this specific design, the cables are all worked on the right side of the fabric, and there's no trying to figure out back post versus front post stitches or working behind other stitches. These are simplified cables, and they all are worked on a background of single crochet, so that way you have the flattest and most essentially the warmest fabric on the inside, because there are very few to no holes on the inside because of the way the cables are worked. So the written pattern is available for this over on the blog, theloopylamb.com, and it's free to follow along with on the blog. However, today, just to help make sure that everybody can make this hat, I am going to cover how to do the different cable stitches and these front post popcorns. Now for this project, I have used a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook. This is a Furls Odyssey in the color turquoise, and we used the King Cole Wildwood Chunky yarn from King Cole, and this is a 100% recycled wool yarn. It's absolutely delightful to work with, and I am going to be making multiple of these hats with this wool because it is very warm and cozy for the winter months. So without further ado, I'm going to clear off my workspace here, and I'm going to jump into showing you how to do the cable stitches for my Lakeview Cabled Beanie. So today I'm going to be covering the cable stitches that are used in my Lakeview Cabled Beanie pattern. And today I'm using the Wildwood Chunky yarn from King Cole. This is a 100% recycled wool, and I'm using the colored Lake. You can find the yardage details at the written version of this pattern on my blog, theloopylamb.com. And I'm using a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook. The gauge information for this pattern as well can be found over on the pattern page on my blog, and I'll also link to that in the description box below. So here I have already done my brim of my hat, and I've done the first 2 rows. And for row 3, this is where we set up our cables to be worked into for subsequent rows. So row 1 is probably the trickiest of them, just to make sure that you're getting your stitches where they need to go. So for row 1, we work our single crochets along the top of the brim, and then we've got 2 rows of single crochet here. So when we are working row 3, the instructions say that we're going to do a front post double crochet in the first 2 stitches. So we join our rows in previous rows. So we want to make sure we're not counting that slip stitch when we're looking for our stitches to work our posts into. So this is my slip stitch here and my first stitch, and I'm going to locate this stitch directly below that, because all of the post stitches are worked 2 rows below. So we're not working into this stitch. So this is our first row, 1 and 2. So we're working into that first row of stitches. So it's a little tricky to see because you have worked into the top of the brim here. So just do your best when you're estimating where to work. But I can tell from the legs of this stitch here that they're placed into the top of this stitch, and that's my first stitch of the previous row. So I'm going to yarn over hook, and I'm going to insert my hook from front to back and back to front around the post of that stitch. Then I'm going to yarn over and pull up a loop. I'll have 3 loops on my hook. Then I'll yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops, and then yarn over and pull through the last 2. And that's my first front post double crochet completed. And now that I've got that located or situated here, it's a little easier to continue working my cable stitches across. So I'm going to do a front post double crochet into the next stitch. So front yarn over, insert into the front of the fabric, around and out the other side of that post stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and then yarn over and pull through 2. And there's your first 2 post stitches. So we've done the first instruction, which is front post double crochet around the first 2 stitches. And when you do these stitches, you have to skip the stitches behind them. So when we get to our next instruction, which is single crochet in the next 2 stitches, we're going to skip the first and second stitch in behind and single crochet into the next 2 stitches. So just in case you're not familiar with the single crochet, we're just going to insert into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. There's 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through 2. And that's your single crochet. And then we're single crocheting into the next stitch as well. So our next instruction is to do a front post double crochet into the next 4 stitches. So remember how I mentioned that once you have your first 2 post stitches, it's easier to know where to place your next post stitches because you can count over from your last post stitch. So I've got my last post that I did here, and then I did 2 singles, so I can count over 2, 1, 2 to skip those. And so I know that my next stitch has to be worked around this stitch here. And our next stitches are 4 front post double crochets. So yarning over, I'm inserting into that stitch, picking up the post, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. And we're going to do that in the next 3 stitches as well. Right. So this is how your work should look right now. It doesn't look like a whole lot yet, but as we continue working, you'll start to see those cables building up. So we've got 2 front posts, 2 singles, and 4 post stitches. And again, when we're doing our post stitches, we're skipping all of the stitches in the back. So in the back, if I flip it up, I can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and my next stitch to work is this stitch directly next to the last post stitch. And now I'm going to work 1 single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. So there's my first and my second. And now I'm going to do 2 front post double crochets. So again, if I'm not sure where to place my hook, I can find that last post stitch I did, count over 2 to skip for those single crochets that I did. So 1, 2, and then I know that my next stitch is the 3rd stitch here. So I'm going to do a front post double crochet in the first stitch, and then a front post double crochet around the next. And again, remembering to skip those stitches behind the posts. Now we're going to do 1 single crochet into each of the next 7 stitches. So again, I'm making sure I've skipped 2 stitches back here, working into that 3rd, and then I'm just going to single crochet in the next 7 stitches. So now that I have my 7 single crochets, I'm ready to start doing my repeat. And so we've done 1 pattern repeat already. We've done our 2 post stitches, 2 single crochets, 4 post stitches, 2 single crochets, 2 post stitches, followed by 7 single crochets. And so that's our repeat, and we're going to continue that across the row. So again, I've got my 7 single crochets, and now I'm going to do those for 2 front post double crochets. Again, if you're not sure where to place your hook, locate your last post stitch. And in this case, we did 7 single crochets, so I'm going to count over 7 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So I know that my next stitch to work is I'm going to insert into this little hole right here. So insert and front post double crochet, and then front post double crochet again. Now we're going to single crochet once into each of the next 2 stitches. Again, make sure you're skipping those 2 stitches in behind here, and we're going to single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Now we're going to front post double crochet around the next 4 stitches. Again, not sure where to place your hook, count over 2 stitches from your last post, and we're going to just do 4 front post double crochets in a row. Right. Again, we're skipping those 4 stitches in behind, working into the 5th stitch. We're going to single crochet. And again, when I say the 5th stitch, I mean if I'm skipping 4 stitches, we're single crocheting in that next stitch. But technically, it's the very next stitch directly next to your post. So I've got 1 single crochet. I'm going to work 1 more single crochet into the next stitch. And then I'm going to do 2 front post double crochets. Then again, skipping those 2 stitches in the back, we're going to single crochet into the next 2 stitches. Oh, sorry, we're going to single crochet into the next 7 stitches. So that's the end of our repeat, is once we do that second set of 2 front post doubles, we're going to do single crochet into the next 7 stitches. And that's the end of our repeat, and we would start this repeat all over again. So now that I've got my 7 single crochets, I would start the repeat again by doing 2 front post doubles, 2 single crochets, 4 front post doubles, 2 single crochets, 2 front post doubles, followed by 7 single crochets. So when you get to the end of the row, meet me back here after you've done your repeats until the end of the row, and I'll show you how to finish off, and then we'll move on to the next set of cables. So I just finished my last stitch of row 3, and I'm going to join my last stitch to my first stitch with a slip stitch. Now the first stitch of our row was a front post double, so I'm going to insert my hook into that stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then pull that loop through the loop on my hook. Now, if you have stitch markers and you're finding it tricky to determine where your first and your last stitch is because that slip stitch can muddy the waters a bit, don't hesitate to add a slip stitch either in the first and or the last stitch in order to prevent yourself from picking up or dropping any extra stitches. So for row 4 is just 1 single crochet into each stitch across. When you come to the back of post stitches or skip stitches here, those are previous rows. You don't want to work into them. You're just going to work into the tops of all of the stitches that you did in your last row. So I'm going to meet you back here and show you how to do row 5 in just a moment here, because we're going to be doing some special front post popcorn stitches. So pause your video and I'll meet you back here in just a moment to show you row 5. So in row 5, we start off doing our post stitches in the same way we did for row 3, and instead we are working into the previous post stitches instead of single crochets. So you can see that our cables are starting to stack. But in row 5, we have a very unique stitch, which is called a front post popcorn stitch. And it adds a really fun texture. I love this stitch so much. And I'm going to show you how we're going to do that now. So our front post popcorn is done 3 rows below. So when we are working into this row, we're going to count that as 1. We're going to count this as 2. And going down, we're going to be working into this 3rd row here. So technically we're on row 5. So we're working into row 2. Okay, so to start our popcorn stitch, we're going to yarn over and insert our hook around that single crochet in the 3rd row below, and we're doing a front post. Okay, so we're yarn over around that stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on your hook now. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through the last 2 loops. And what we're doing is we're doing a double crochet here as part of our popcorn stitch. And we're going to do that 2 more times. So yarn over, back into that same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And that's your second stitch. And we're doing that one more time. Yarn over, back into that same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. So you see we have these 3 double crochets. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull up our loop a little bit so we can remove our hook from the stitch or from the loop, and we're going to insert our hook from the front to back through the first double crochet that we completed. Then we're going to place the loop back on our hook like so. And then we're going to pull that loop through the first stitch to create our front post popcorn. And of course, you're going to skip that stitch directly behind that popcorn, and we're going to work our single crochet into the next 3 stitches as you normally would. And then you've got that fun little popcorn hanging out there. All right, so I'm going to finish off this row and I'll be back in just a jiffy to show you how we're going to do our crossing cables in row 9. So now I'm going to show you how to do our cross stitches as seen in row 9 of the Lakeview Cabled Beanie. So for starting with row 9, it says that we're going to do a cross 2 in front, and that's abbreviated as CR2F. So every time we see CR2F in the pattern, this is what we're going to do. So we are going to skip our first stitch and we're going to front post double crochet around the second stitch. Okay, and then we're going to cross in front of the stitch that we just did and front post double crochet around the skipped stitch. All right, and now we are always skipping the stitches behind our post stitches. So we're going to skip 1, 2, and then the instructions say to do 2 single crochets. So there's 1 and there's 2. And now we are at our 4 post stitches here, and this is where we're going to be doing our cross 4 in front. And you'll see that abbreviated in the pattern as CR4F. And to do our CR4F, or cross 4 in front, we're going to skip the first and second stitches, and we're going to front post crochet, double crochet around these 2 stitches here. So skipping 2, we're going to front post double crochet around the 3rd stitch here, and then we're going to front post double crochet around the next stitch. All right, so this is what your work should look like at this point. Now, working in front of the stitches that we just did, we're going to front post double crochet around the first skipped stitch. So yarn over and front post double crochet around that first skipped stitch, and then front post double crochet around the second skipped stitch. And so as with all of our post stitches, we skip those 4 stitches in behind. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to single crochet once into each of the next 2 stitches. And that is what your work should look like when you're after completing the crosses. You'll have the post stitches in the back leaning towards your right, and then you should have a set of post stitches leaning towards your left. And now we're at the next set of posts, and we're back to having to do a cross 2 in front, and I'll show you how to do that cross 2 in front again. So we're going to skip the first post stitch and front post double crochet around the second. Then working in front of the stitch that we just did, we're going to front post double crochet around the skipped stitch. All right, and you can see how that's coming out there. And then we're going to skip the 2 stitches behind, and we're going to single crochet into the next 7 stitches. So I'll show you how to do the cross to and front again. Skipping the first post stitch, we're going to front post double crochet around the second stitch. Working in front of the stitch we just did, we're going to front post double crochet around the skipped stitch. Then we're going to single crochet 2 into the next 2 stitches. Again, we always skip the stitches behind the post stitches. And then I'm going to show you how to do that cross 4 in front one more time. So we're going to skip the first and second post stitches, and we're going to work front post double crochet around this third post here. So yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, and finish your double crochet. Then we're going to front post double crochet around the next post stitch. And now we're going to cross in front of the work that we just did, these last 2 stitches, and we're going to do our first front post double crochet around this first skip stitch here. So working front post double crochet. And then we're going to work around this stitch here. It's kind of getting a little lost in between the cross, so if you find that's happening, you can just use your fingers to part the piece apart, the 2 posts away from each other, so that way you can see that post more clearly. And we're going to front post double crochet into that second skipped stitch. All right, and again, anytime you're doing these post stitches, you skip the same number of stitches behind the post stitches and work into the next stitch. And in this case, we're working 2 single crochets, right? And that is where our hat is, in the middle of row 9. So that's it for this tutorial. I hope that you found the cable tutorial helpful. If you did, please hit that like button and please consider subscribing to this channel. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you in the comments section below, and I'm happy to help you in any way that I can. If you'd like to make your own cabled beanie, you can find the free version of the written pattern available to follow along with on my blog, theloopylamb.com, or you can find a printable version of the pattern, which includes a stitch diagram to help you with your cabling in both my Ravelry and Etsy shops. So that's it for me today, friends. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy free crochet patterns, please don't forget to check out my blog, theloopylamb.com. Thanks so much for watching, friends. Happy hooking, and I'll see you next time.